Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We're zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to go a little bit more in depth and how does a psychopath get mind control over their targets, over their supply? And I think this is a really important topic to discuss because it's insidious, it's tedious, it's deliberate and calculated, and people don't have the tools to acknowledge it. They don't see it coming. They have an awareness that something might be sort of enigmatic or puzzling or different or maybe off about this person, but there's a desire to know more. And a psychopath, if we just really quick understand that there's a whole spectrum of people who are exhibiting of an antisocial personality disorder. Largely, what is the main presenting situation is a lack of conscience. They don't have a conscience. They don't experience sort of fear. They don't experience rules and laws and regulations the way that most people do. They don't feel a need to follow along. It's just absent in them. So for them, they can just steam roll right through things if that's what they'll just take what they want. They don't feel any sort of hesitancy, but they do learn that other people do and behave specific ways, so they observe and mimic. And the psychopath, will be sort of standoffish and seem very quiet, but in the meanwhile, they're just sort of sussing out the situation. They're finding what's what, who's got the low-hanging fruit, who is vulnerable, who's got their guard down, who has a lot of needs that I can just sort of attach myself into and create this manipulation, this psychological hijacking. So it's to know that a psychopath, it's like they have a different language. They don't have an emotional resonance. All sorts of studies have been done. A doctor in University of Wisconsin, Dr. Robert Hare. There's all sorts of studies that have looked at the emotional language and emotional reactions, how the dopamine is elicited, how the amygdala is working, the center that processes fear and that fight or flight, as well as the prefrontal cortex that allows you to learn, plan for the future, dream. All these different components of the miracle that we have, all the different capacities and functions and features of this is much different in a psychopath than the bulk and the rest of society, i.e. 98%, 96, 99%. So they are sort of missing this wiring for this connection or wanting to bond with others. They don't have that same feeling of loyalty, love, connection, wanting to grow, learn, evolve. It's just kind of like they go by what they want. They don't have an emotional setback of things like fear, like, well, that won't work or that would be wrong. They don't house those same feelings. So if you're around them long enough, you're going to pick up and become aware of a different communication style, because their words because their perception does not include an emotional content, they see things differently. So their choice of words, their sentence structure will be oftentimes humorous. They'll use humor to kind of get their talons in and take over your thought process, and then your perception. So it's important to understand that thoughts are things, James Allen, Napoleon Hill, and so they'll affect your thoughts, which are then manifest changes in your life. It changes your perspective. It changes your perception. It is mind altering because they're changing the thought patterns. And with this, then, they are replacing your thought patterns with something else, which usually becomes hyper arousal, which becomes bombardment of your senses, which becomes a transgression of your boundaries, which becomes an infringing on your personal space, your heart, your center, your values. All that becomes sort of, just sort of combed through. And what they're doing is they're absorbing and learning from you, almost like an encyclopedia. What does this person, look for in connection? Are they looking to stand close to me? Ooh, then I will stand close. Are they wanting to hold hands? Well, I guess I should hold hands. Even though they don't have that desire, they will mimic because it gets them what they want. They can put on a show and for their life, I mean, they will act as if. In employment settings, marriage settings, having double and triple lives, being completely different over here than they are over here. Even their language patterns, they might talk like a real economist over here and know a lot about international government or something, and then over here, they're completely docile and don't know what to do with their life, and then over here they're very into their family, and so it's very like splintered or fragments. It's very fragmented, and so they don't have this connection to people, so they can just pick up and go through relationships, groups of people very, very easily. And so, but how do they get sort of into and target people? And so they're going to look for people who have a need, who are lonely, have a neediness or a need for a relationship, need for guidance, need for instruction. This can take place in the workplace, where they sense that either someone knows a lot of information, and so they kind of come there with a sob story, and they sort of get in and transgress boundaries that way, through making people feel sorry for them, especially people who are higher up and that have a lot of knowledge and context, and so they'll kind of latch themselves on there to extract information and use it sort of plow by you. So they kind of just pick up what they need, and then they just they're gone. And so they will manipulate others through a sob story. Here they come on the scene, and they'll be laughing, and you can't believe what happened to me. There's this cognitive dissonance right away. They'll relay stories, yet their emotion doesn't match the story. I just can't believe my dog was put to sleep. I'm divorced, and, my dog was put to sleep today. And they're just kind of joking about it, and, and now, I've got, the bill collectors, and they're kind of like laughing. Their mood is absence of fear, concern, stress, or tension. In fact, to them, it's just funny that people are going through all this. So they take, in my viewpoint, an observation, as we set forth here. So this, to me, this is their version of how to have a relationship with somebody, is this sort of, using their manipulation tactics. So they're looking for people who have a neediness, people who need to be validated, people who don't get enough eye contact, people who don't get enough touch contact, who aren't treated like a boss, who aren't treated like a woman, who aren't treated like a man, or who have an abundance of these things or emotions that they can then observe, watch, and then use for future manipulation. So if you're very emotional, you're very romantic, you have a lot of family values, you possess a lot of what you're concerned about things, you're worried, am I lovable, all these things that they don't have. They will latch onto people who have an abundance of this emotionality, so they can just immerse themselves in and then sort of structure a persona that satisfies these. So they'll just give these people what they need so they can get what they need, and there's no connection between what they present and then what they're taking. So it's a real fragmentation. And to a psychopath, there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with having this sort of splintered, hurtful lifestyle where they're like, yeah, I got to call it quits. I'm just, and just, they have no attachment, they have no bond, they have no hard feelings, they have no loss. Like, it doesn't feel human, and so it can feel like this, sort of, in the beginning, there was a love bombing where they came in and everything just, they filled up all the cracks and the nooks and crannies of where you were needy inside. So it's important to understand, what neediness did you have? Maybe you hadn't dated in a while, maybe the business, you're looking for acknowledgement and validation. You need to be treated more gently. So here they come very gently, or aggressively. So, or they need, gifts. They need outings. What were your needs that they just sort of came in and then fulfilled, but they knew that they couldn't back it up, but they presented as if and solid and strong. This is how they manipulate. They find your, people with needs who aren't looking for, to be careful, to be cautious. They've got their guard down. They just kind of come in, or maybe they were introduced, hey, and then all of a sudden it's like everything is going just fantastically well. More than you could ask for in the relationship. So it seems like, the universe over-delivered. But, then as we're saying, because of the structures that are set up differently in their mind, and they don't have that same emotional context. When they listen to music, they don't hear the words. They perceive something else. When they watch a movie, they're looking for other strategies and they're perceiving things differently. So and even though you don't want or can't think like that, just know that there's this other dimension that they're coming from. And usually when you would have trepidation and concern, they're not worried. So there can oftentimes be a feeling of relief with these people. And reliance, reliability, perfect, just a glorious, the heat of the passion. You've never felt anything so aroused. You've never felt so aroused, so stimulated. It's just like a drug. It's becoming a concoction. I call it it's like a concoction of different chemicals that aren't meant to be combined. So you get aroused sort of by this fear. You get aroused by kind of going against what is in your best interest. There becomes this hyper arousal, which is a very unique concoction, which is kind of like a craft beer, but it's like a craft concoction that this person is making in you. And you're seeking this feeling. And this feeling oftentimes is because they know how to violate those boundaries and reward you for going against your best interest and what's best for you. But you don't see it. It's very difficult to put words to. But I'm trying to be one out there who is trying to explain it to you. Because it's taboo. People don't talk about this. We just need to lay it out there so you can get some healing and get some things cleared out and get free and get liberated and get feeling peaceful and safe. And so the manipulation, getting in right close. And then when your guard is down, yeah, this is a great idea. Yeah, this is, and then they just see, things just take flight. It's just a feeling of euphoria, and then, people then kind of have this dissociation with their regular life. They dissociate from it. They just kind of take it off, and all of a sudden they're perceiving things differently. It's this bubbling up of the dopamine. They're on a high. They're on, this high that is generated from the hyper arousal. So when you're in that, the communication patterns of someone who is psychopathic is going to be different. They're going to use objects in the environment and your attention to sort of thread and weave meaning and awareness that causes you to feel an attraction and glued, and your subconscious is basically being taken over. How you perceive, how you categorize, and what is stimulating to you then becomes the forefront. Everything can be sexualized. Everything, can be sexualized and made into this sexual elicitor or something that really is provocative. There's always very provocative sort of communication, and it's going somewhere where it doesn't end. In other words, the feeling of arousal is so complete that people kind of lose the control, but it's very pleasant. It's very stimulating. You might get a buzz from it. And so this buzz is then taking the place, and then you want to follow this hyper arousal that, wow, this is, what movies are made of. This is what, the stories of Romeo and Juliet are made of. This, and then this is the one, or this is what everybody wants. It's a fantasy-like relationship. And it causes a lot of fantasizing, but not visualizing. And people will get confused and get a lot of fog because of this. So the fantasizing then, but then you've still got a foot in reality. and then pretty soon the foot in reality starts to get off the ground, especially when they then begin to use the communication, the hyper arousal, the jokes that are said that are sexualizing, that will get people sort of in the wrong time, in the wrong place, which will then get you queued up. They cue people up to perceive and think the way that they do. And, a lot of experts will say, number one, you don't want to think like a psychopath. You don't want to mimic or mirror how they do, because it'll end you in disaster. It'll end you in terror. You'll lose everything that you love and that you've built in your life, and you won't be able to recognize yourself. This is really not pleasant. And so, but it's mixed with what oftentimes is the hyperarousal and that sexual energy, that creative energy that will just blow out all the gaskets. And then as we're saying, the threading and weaving of things, where things in your environment no longer are what they are. They are flipped with meaning. And this sounds very strange. I'm going to say peace and harmony. Have you lost your cookies? No. I'm giving you an objective understanding, and taking that emotion out so you can understand how they use objects, things, and transference of meaning onto a thread of perception that they're creating within you. So they're creating inside a bubble, and rather than it growing and being protective and magnanimous, it's really just something that eventually is going to pop, and then you'll finally expose them, and then they'll just be, okay, and do you want to get together? I mean, they've just devastated you. You've just embarked on something that was very hurtful, and then they're just not affected. This is just what they do. So, threading the meaning to things. I don't want to start going there, but, there's just all sorts of examples that they will use. For example, two headlights, coming out. And then all of a sudden those headlights become women's breasts. And then all of a sudden those are the exit sign, and that their fluids are going to exit when they see these. I mean, they use, I know it's like dirty talk, but it becomes more involved in the psychology. And it's very off base. It's very not, it's going to lead you into just sort of a drug addiction where you can't function. You're just sort of, slabbering, licking, they have people licking at their chops, and oftentimes so hyper aroused that they have compulsions, masturbation, fantasy compulsions. They can't stop thinking about them, dreaming about them. And this person who is psychopathic, they know this. They know that once they've got you hooked, they know that you're going to be trying to figure things out, getting that paranoia, getting to be like an investigator, but meanwhile, your feet are now off the ground. You're on cloud, 36, and you're just like, whoa, and you're just floating through there. And it does feel like you're floating. So it does feel that you've got this concoction, this chemistry, where you're really just sort of going from cloud to cloud. You're going from rainbow to rainbow, fantasy to fantasy, but it's not the vision. In other words, it's going to be immaterial. It's going to be insubstantial. It's designed to, give you a drop, give you a drop. And when that occurs, it might be in 8 months, it might be in 2 years, it might be in 7 weeks, it might be in 4.5 years. But eventually you're going to be able to click, and clear through that. And so it's the disordered thinking then, where then you begin to just sort of latch onto their thinking, and you dissociate from your own, the regular. Oh, this is great. This is a change. This is a change of scenery. It's a change of perspective. So there's all these reasons to stay with it. It helps reduce the stress. You might have all these discussions with yourself, but you might, and it's very sort of secretive. So then you create this secret life, the way that they have a secret life. and you disown certain parts of you. I mean, this is how the thought process begins to emerge. And the hyper arousal, the high risk behavior. They don't like to be bored, so they're always, if there is no agitation, they will create some. And oftentimes it feels like when they're there, okay, life is back, but life begins with you. So it's like this waiting, as if you're waiting for the drug. You're waiting, and you might have just seen them, so you've still got a little bit in your system, but then it's wearing down, and then you want to go back to, cloud 56, and so you'll create situations, and then you'll go back to 56, and so the thought patterns are what becomes, done, what becomes undone, and it becomes just, your mind is not supposed to have all these chemicals mixed in. You are not supposed to have this concoction, this hyper arousal, this, you're losing your own grip. And to them, it's not a bond. They're creating a trauma bond, which is different from knowing that you should be fearful or hesitant. You're not experiencing the fear. So instead of feeling fear or concern or that you should put a foot down, that's blown out of the water. I mean, you're feeling euphoria. What do you have to be afraid of? I mean, you've met this person, all of a sudden, you're conquering this together. But that is not what's really going on. They're conquering all sorts of other stuff, and you might find that they're all of a sudden moving to Amsterdam or Costa Rica, and you're like, what? I thought we were talking, it's just what's, and then you expose them. You catch them with their mask down, and you see this completely colorless, lifeless, mean, just cold entity. And so you can see that the thought creates this whole energy in an environment with these people. And they will tell you that the energy oozes out from them. They know how to sort of exude this sort of stun gun, and a stun gun is kind of like what it is. And if you're with me this far, if you want to type, I get it, we're here to support you. It can be very difficult to make the transition. So we're here to help you clarify and make that transition and get clear focused, and, and get back into your own shoes, back into your own body, get back into your own cool, calm demeanor, and not hyper aroused by, in what this is doing. So they'll change the thought patterns. There's the psychopathic stare, which is very reptilian, which a lot of people confuse as seduction, but they're just using it to elicit that, sexual prowess when it's not appropriate to be feeling that, at that time of day, all the time. And that's how they break you down. So they'll also break down their target, meaning they'll wear you out. Their goal is so that you're always thinking about them. Always thinking about them. What, does this make sense? If you're always thinking about them, what is that doing to you? Is it smothering you, burying you, putting a weight on you, putting a pressure, putting putting a barrier? Is it really limiting you? Is it causing you disorientation, distorted thoughts, delusion, paranoia? I mean, let's really take stock of it. Is it, creating a chronic sort of lack of being present, where you've got 1 foot in and 1 foot out of your lifestyle, and you have to really look at that and just to say, okay, what is really going to be the outcome? Because the psychopath, they don't really look forward and plan. In their prefrontal cortex, it's the area for planning, looking ahead, judgment, learning from mistakes. You'll also find that they, after big reveals, they don't learn, they're not ashamed, you've just exposed them for cheating, and they don't, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to church, I'm going to go to therapist, they're not feeling any of this. They might say something, but there's no substance behind it. And to stop, being, to extract yourself from this can be a real judgment call, because the fantasy doesn't have that long range vision, and your prefrontal cortex is one that's designed to learn, is designed to plan, is designed to look ahead. That's who I am. I'm designed, to be able to do this. Where if you're in that life, you're going to have some truncated dreams. You're going to have some truncated, just sort of shut down development, personal development, family development, professional development, because you're staying in that zone. And so in breaking you down, you become weaker. You get your ability to stand up for yourself, to do the right thing, to go, and they'll put things in the environment that are distracting to your attention. They might draw things on the wall, scratch things out in the paint of a car, take strange items of yours and put them in their pillowcase, and, to keep you sort of, why are you doing this? Oh, and just these strange, odd things, just, and to get your attention, just sort of, the energy is there when you feel that there's some energy here. They were just messing around with somebody, and then their body is like making a shape in their initials. Like if their name, it begins with a G, you'll find that they're doing G, E, they'll do strange things where they'll just sign things out with their body, and they'll just use shape and negative space. It's manipulative, and people will be engulfed, entranced, enslaved. So if you have gotten into this, feel free to extricate yourself from this. We have a lot of tools here to resensitize yourself. It does get better, but realize that, these are some of the hows that's created. And once you can kind of look back clearly with time, you'll see what they did, and that now you have power against it. So once you feel that personal power, hold on to that. That's going to be your saving grace. It's your buddy. Peace and harmony here today. I hope the videos do help. Please share, subscribe, please donate, and join the new Peace and Harmony memberships. We've got some great videos there to take your healing and awareness to the next level. Have a beautiful day.